Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today at this Charged EV Infrastructure webinar. And the topic of this session is solving EVSE deployment and scalability challenges with flexible power distribution. And it's brought to you by Starline. There will be a Q&A session, as always, after the presentation and discussion. So please do submit your questions at any time by clicking the Q&A button on your screen. And a recorded video of the session will also be available to view on demand after the event is complete, and you'll be able to visit the registrations page on our site for more details, but we will also send a follow-up email to everybody who has registered with links to this. So welcoming our speakers today, I have Doug Moore, Senior Product Manager of the Industrial Sector, and Adrian Sanchez, Director of C&I Sales, both from Starline. Welcome to you both, Doug and Adrian. Thank you so much for joining us at the session today. Do you want to just kick off? I'm going to go for Doug first. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then Adrian, if you want to follow on.
Sure. Thanks, Chloe. Thanks for having us. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Just want to
absolutely fine.
Confirm. All right, great. Doug Moore, I am Senior Product Manager for Starline, working mainly in the commercial and industrial space. So basically, helping solve problems similar to what we're going to talk about today, using Starline products globally. So go ahead, Adrian.
Chloe, thank you so much for having us. Greetings from Pittsburgh. I know you're in the UK. My name is Adrian. Like you said, I've been with Starline for 8 years. Before that, it was about 14 years in different roles in the electrical industry. Prior to that, in manufacturing, process engineering, some of those jobs, and I currently live in Pittsburgh. And we're pretty excited to be on your show. I mean, we have been long partners of Charge Magazine. In fact, probably the first ad or the first article that we published in your magazine goes back to 2017, Doug, perhaps. So pretty excited to meet you virtually, and of course, thank you to the public, to the audience rather, to join us.
Well, you're our absolute pleasure to host you today. So let's get started and let's just look at a bit of context and how you've come to be moving into the EV sector. So Starline has a long-standing reputation for specializing in power distribution solutions, specifically track busway systems. But until recently, these were primarily used in settings more like data centers, industrial manufacturing facilities, and commercial buildings. So can you just tell us a bit more about how you and why you've moved into electric vehicle supply equipment sector, and tell us a bit about this shift into the EV infrastructure space and how you're helping installers and those deploying these kinds of projects overcome some of the challenges that they are facing?
Well, absolutely. I can probably start with that we're a company that's been in business for over 90 years, 90. That's a long time, Chloe. Recently with Legrand, we became part of the Legrand family five years ago, but we have been specializing on power distribution, overhead power distribution systems for over 30 years. And we have been fortunately extremely successful in some of the markets like data centers. We currently do business with a lot of the automotive OEMs all over the world, etc. But just like most companies, we saw a big opportunity to bring that value proposition into the EVSE infrastructure market, right? And that trigger for us to start going to trade shows and talking to people in the industry, right? So those benefits are transferable to any industry, and hopefully by the end of our webinar, we'll be able to present that to the audience and to you as well.
Great. And I think we were going to look at those challenges that some in our audience may be facing. And I don't know if we were going to go to do kind of a little polling slide. So are you ready for me to launch that?
Let's roll.
Go for it.
Let's do that. Okay. So this should appear on your screens now. And we'll give it around a minute for everybody to start responding. Come on, I haven't even got, the first person is doing it now, it's coming through. So we're looking, the question is, what are the biggest challenges you are facing during your EVSE installations? And you can choose a few, we've left it as multiple choice here. It'll be interesting for our team here at Starline to see really what are some of the challenges Okay, I've got around 50% of the audience now having responded, so I'll give it another 10 seconds. And then Adrian, Doug, I'm going to share the results on the screen so you can have a little walk through those in a few moments.
Great.
Okay.
Excellent. We can't wait to see what audience has to say.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll there. If you missed out, well, you missed a big party. Right, I'm going to share those results now. You should be able to see those on your screen. Doug, Adrian, can you see those?
Absolutely.
Yeah, got it.
Great.
Look at that. Overall installation cost 40%. Site make ready 45%. Not surprising. In planning for growth, scalability. Interesting. It's interesting results, right? Very scattered somewhat. I'm surprised to hear only electrical labor resource availability. It's only 10%, but we'll address them. Great. This is great. Anything you see there, Doug? Anything that highlights it?
Oh, sorry. I just
No, the only thing I was going to mention is, that list of responses are things that we've seen, right? Those are things that we've encountered or heard. So I was going to say, if there's anything that's more important than those that wasn't on there, maybe people could just throw them in the question Q&A or something.
Use the Q&A box and just we can chat about them as we go through or when we get to our Q&A part. So yeah, please do add any other challenges that might not have been listed there. It's always good to hear for both us here at Charged and for the team at Starline. So we talked through the product before we did the webinar, and one of the big things you've talked about in kind of launching these products for the EV infrastructure sector is that you're bringing a product that is both scalable and flexible in the power solutions that is offering to the EV charging environment. Could you go into a bit more detail about that?
Absolutely. We're ready to talk about that on the screen to the audience. We're going to keep it very simple. We're going to talk more about the challenges that the audience responded. What are the solutions? We need to introduce a little bit so people can understand what our solutions offer. More importantly, we have a case study where we can have and show some very interesting results, very favorable results, and of course Q&A. So let's get rolling. But before, if you allow us, Chloe, we'd like to put a little context into the presentation, right? I think it's unarguably the electric vehicle adoption continues to rise globally, right? The numbers on the left are for the US, where we have seen a huge increase on public EV charging stations, but it's not enough, right? In 2009, there were less than 500. Right now, we're sitting at about 60,000 public EV charging stations. And the government has also implemented a lot of incentives, $623 million US dollars, right, to help with the EVSE infrastructure in the road to becoming green. Also, in the global spectrum on the right-hand side, we can see a huge, even faster growth of EV commercial fleets. In just 8 years, it went from 30 million to 240 million electric vehicle commercial fleets, right? Now, these numbers do not count the 18-wheeler. These are basically light-duty, medium-duty type of vehicles that probably travel 150 miles. What is that, about 250 kilometers a day, right? And they can come back at night and charge at their locations. But ultimately, this is here to stay. There's been some interesting behaviors. Chloe, let me ask you, do you drive a company car? I'm sorry, do you drive an electric vehicle by any chance?
I drive a hybrid. I wish I drove an electric vehicle. No, but I will tell you why. Well, one of my excuses is that I live in a typical London, UK house, which has very little land to itself, terraced house, and also the house is on a hill. So there's no easy access to charging your car, and it's actually really expensive to charge publicly in general around here. And I live in London, and capacity for the charges is actually pretty jam-packed. So we've got a hybrid one day for an electric. I'm looking forward to getting a company car from Charge, though, obviously. Well, my boss is listening.
There's nothing wrong in driving a hybrid. I personally drive a plug-in hybrid, but just to put some things in perspective, I was able to travel more than 1,500 miles with one tank of gas, right? Because it uses both. But obviously, just like you and me, we're seeing the challenges of not having enough charging stations. And on the commercial side, the benefits, the savings on gas, right, are huge, right? That's why we're seeing this long transition. Anything we'd like to add on this one, Doug?
No, I guess I could say I'm not an early adopter, so I'm waiting for us to get all these things up and installed. So before I feel comfortable, right? What do they say, range anxiety or whatever? I'm probably one of those guys. So
Well,
not too far
hopefully we are
behind, probably.
contributing with that. So let's just talk about more context, right? This is a photograph of a condominium resort building in South Florida. This building was built about 10, 15 years ago, I believe. But when it was designed, Chloe, and to the audience, was not designed to have EV charging stations, right? So can you imagine the amount of buildings that are in the same spot that they need to have the EV infrastructure and they need to be retrofitted, and they're facing all kinds of challenges to do that, right? And one of them, just like your audience says, is the high installation costs, right? Here's another example that we saw in New Jersey, in the US, in the state of New Jersey. We have a multi-tenant parking space, and this building has 420 condominiums. But as of last year, late last year, 167 of those tenants requested an EV charger that the old building could not provide, right? So how do you solve these problems, right? And ultimately, these 167 spots are scattered in 4 different floors. So if our audience understand electrical distribution, these are really, really severe challenges. Another thing is a lot of the clearance or the height of these floors are very, very small or very, very low. So that incurs into big, big costs, right, to retrofit it. And as people keep adopting hybrids or electric vehicles, this becomes a bigger, bigger problem, right? How do we energize our vehicles, right? Here's another example. This is a barn for a school bus parking lot for a school district in Indiana, I believe. This is a recent challenge that they have. They cannot have the typical EV electric charger pedestal that it's fed from the ground up. And they want to utilize the overhead space, right, which is all the ceiling up here. As you can see, the parking is very tight. They don't have enough room. And of course, there's an issue if they're going to hit the EV chargers on the floor, right? So these are challenges. And ultimately, in the US, there's about 500,000 school buses and only 12,000 electric school buses in the US. So the level of adoption is still very small, but we're seeing, as we show in one of the first slides, how the adoption continues to accelerate at a gigantic step, all right? And here's another one. This image illustrates some of the findings that we found in the poll early in the call, right? If you take a look here at the dark blue area, the navy blue area, these represent the site make ready costs. In other words, the preparation that it takes for any installation before you even start installing the place, right? Installing the EV charger. So you can see the blue area is really, really big in comparison with the operational, right, part of it. So this is a common problem, especially when you're looking at the first generation of EV pedestals, where they have to trench, they have to dig through concrete. It just takes a lot of time. These typical pedestals were designed, and once again, there's nothing wrong with a pedestal, right? But the system was designed to have 4 or 5 chargers maybe in mind 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But now what we are seeing is that the parking lots, etc., they want to have a provision for up to 700 electric vehicles. So those are the challenges, right? Doug, I think you can mention something here too, right?
Yeah, well, I think the next slide, I think we have some other images that. Yeah, so here, we've got an example here of different ways that conventional methods being used today. So what Adrian's talking about is a lot of time, a lot of cost for the make site ready. But that's if it's planned, it's one thing. But if it's a retrofit, you're going into an existing garage and you have to go in and tear everything up. Not only do you have all the costs and time associated with that, but you're also, it's intrusive, right? There's this parking lot is not accessible during that time, right? So if you can avoid that, I'm sure everybody would prefer to avoid that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think going back to what I brought in at the beginning, talking about a lot of these options are not very scalable at all, very disruptive if you want to expand, etc. So how are the busway systems that you're bringing in far more scalable? How flexible are they? And also, how do they compare to more traditional hardwired products as well?
Well, Go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say, we're definitely going to get into that. And I think one other thing I wanted to add here is in both of these cases, whether you're doing overhead with pipe and wire or underground, you do all this work, and then 2 years from now, you got to add 20 more chargers, right? So now you may have to do it again, right? So back to your point about scalability and planning for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's very time consuming, very labor intensive, Chloe. These two examples on the right of the screen are in Seattle. The one on the right, it was only 10 wall-mounted level 2 EV chargers, and that alone cost over than $500,000. The middle picture, pipe and wire, once again, there's nothing wrong with this method, but pipe and wire was invented over than 100 years ago. Very conventional, very rigid. If you need to remove, just like that said, it takes time, and it's convoluted. And I mean, of course, you guys get the point, right? But let's try to talk about what we have done to address some of these limitations, right, in pipe and wire.
So just real high level, just for those that, there's probably different levels of familiarity with our product or with Track Busway in general. So this description here, this definition basically sums it up, but it's enclosed conductor bars. You can see this is kind of a cross-section view of two of our straight bus runs. It's aluminum housing with continuous access slot underneath. So that's really the key here, because now you have availability of power anywhere along there. So, and then, yeah, this next slide here, this shows you a couple things. The main image here is kind of like an overhead assembly of our system. So, you've got a power feed or an end feed where the power comes in, and you've got it's basically a modular system, right? You've got different straight runs, T's, elbows, and you can kind of diagram or I guess form any type of assembly that fits your specific building, location, park garage in this case. And it basically, what do we always say, Adrian? It basically provides a panel, an overhead panel, electric panel, where it's accessible at any point. So other than, of course, where the joints are and that kind of thing.
Exactly. So what this overhead system does, it allows you, Chloe, and to the audience to utilize the overhead space that nobody's using, right? It's out of harm's way. And we have made some big leaps on development a system that provides protection against dust and liquids. And that's what you see here in the picture. I'm sorry, in the video in the top right corner here, basically shows our busway during the test at the lab, right? But just to make it a little easier to understand, we have an example for you, Chloe, that I'm sure the audience can relate to it. So let me ask you, Chloe, when was the last time you were at an airport and you needed to charge your cell phone? And you had to go and find the plug. Mm-hmm. And when you found it, it worked, right? I mean, have you come across that situation before?
A number of times. If you're even lucky enough to get to the plug, because there isn't someone hogging it for 3 hours already. Yeah, the fact that if it actually works is a miracle. And I've been to many an airport, so yeah.
So the analogy here is that with Starline, you have the ability to create your own electrical grid above your head and plug and play, like in reference to the famous toys, Legos. You can build and create, right? It's no different than that, right? And ultimately, with the busway solution, the power comes with you, right? But you don't have to go where the power is to connect. You bring a plug that you can just simply connect to the system. And we have the perfect video to show you guys that. So first of all, the system is safe. You have exposed hot copper conductors inside, but the design of the plug-in unit, and you can see how the operator installs. As soon as you make contact with the bottom part of the enclosure, you already ground it. In other words, the electricity is grounded, so that is safe. That is number one for safety. To the matter that the busway carries a UL 857, which is basically the article of the Underwriters Lab, which is the third-party tester. And that makes it safe and gives you the ability to plug and play any way you want it within the open channel at the bottom, just like you see over here. So you can imagine the flexibility to put the power where exactly you need it. Here in the video, you can see a cut of the side view of the busway. Here's the actual drawing. So you can see how the blade goes inside. This gray area here is what we call the paddle connector. And when you insert, you ground it, and then you twist 90 degrees to make the electrical connection by making contact to the copper that is inside the enclosure. So hope this video is self-explanatory, Chloe.
Yeah, it's great. Now, some of our viewers, that some of the videos they are running a little slow, but I think everybody gets you get the idea exactly of what's happening there. In fact, the slow-mo actually helps for someone like me understand it a little bit more. So actually, thank you.
Thank you, Chloe.
But
Thank
we are
you
aware, the speakers and I are aware, but sometimes the videos are a little slower, but they are very, very helpful. Thank you, Adrian.
Well, I'm glad it helps out. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, hopefully at least comes through enough to get the, understand the process there.
Oh, they were absolutely fine. Yeah. I just wanted to mention it to the audience that we do know that sometimes they stagger a little bit. They were fine.
So so we just showed kind of what the system is, the overview, but here just to give you an idea of the range of the products, the busway. So we go all the way from our T1 system, which is 40 and 60 amp, up to our T5 and S5. So that's 1250 amps globally. The difference between the T5 and the S5, just so people know, it's the same platform, same electrical performance ratings. One is the T5 is our standard, and then the S5 is our Series S with the IP54 rating. So, which is in most cases would be probably used in a parking garage or this type of application. And then on the right-hand side, we got the plug-in units, and you can see a variety of them there, and you saw a variety in the video as well. But the key here is that we can customize this basically for any customer's needs, right? So these all are circuit protected, either with breakers or fuses. We can do drop cord connectors of different types. We can do receptacle types. You see some here that have multiple receptacles in them. Some of them have multiple receptacles in the drop box. Or in some cases, we literally just provide you a circuit breaker plug. You put it where you want it, and you can wire it up in the field, as needed. So I think we've done over 100,000 different designs, I think, in the history, and I think there's, I don't know, Adrian, what, 7 million potential configurations. So, but they're always coming with new ones. So who knows? So.
Exactly. So you can see the level of scalability, the level of customization.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Also like to point out, Chloe, you have heard us say the term IP54 several times.
Yeah.
I'm sure the EV market, the EV sector understands IP ratings, but let me just very quickly.
Please do. Yeah.
IP54 stands for ingress protection 5.4. The numerical characters are the level of protection. The first one, level of protection against dust, and the second one against liquid. So the higher the number is, the larger the protection is, right? So IP54, it's splash proof against dust and ingress protection. And ultimately, I like to point out, and this is the project that Doug and his team have led. It is the first IP54 rated open channel busway in the world that we know of. So very proud of that. And this is a response. Right?
And just talking about that, I just seen a comment come in, and is the product IP67 or IP68 rated? And that's coming from Chris Angelou. Does that,
Chris,
what does that mean to you?
Great question. So I'm glad this is perfect timing, right? Because we were talking about, so the higher level, in this case, Chris is saying IP67 or 68. So that's a higher level of protection when you have inches of water splashing out of pressure against your electrical equipment. Our busway is not rated for IP67 for many reasons, right? Number one, it's not going to be submerged in water. Usually it's overhead, I don't know, 10, 15 feet above the floor. So it's away from the splash zone, but installed in a parking lot is going to be exposed to sprinklers, right? So this is splash proof, right? So we try to aim as high as possible. However, just like you see here on the image, Chris, we can couple our plugs with IP67 rated connectors here at the bottom. So you have an increased protection, right? Not only the plug-in unit or the busway on the top, but everything that goes below that can have that additional IP rating protection that you talked to. We've done that, I don't know, thousands of times, Doug, maybe?
So. Oh, yeah. And in fact, all the Series S connectors are at least IP67 rated. So again, we've done creative things with customers in the past, different applications where maybe we protect the bus at a higher level, but you've got, like he said, the higher IP rating for the connector, which might be 8 feet below or something like that.
And just quickly to wrap up on this, Joseph has just come in and said, does that mean, and you probably mentioned it, you talked about sprinklers, does that mean it can be sprayed from below, from say a hose or a power washer?
Great questions.
Well, IP54, if you actually look at the test, it's from parallel in 180 degrees, the test, the spray. So technically, you're not. It's supposed to be coming from the top or the side, basically. That's the testing that we did, and that's to meet the standard. That's the IP54
Right.
required protocol. So,
Okay.
so yeah, it's really sprinkler proof. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out that the Series S system requires the installation of a closure strip that you see right here. It is not required for a T series, but it is required for S series. And this basically covers any gaps on the open channel at the bottom of the enclosure that allows you to have that extra protection, right? Not required to test the water, just like Doug said, from the bottom up, but will definitely give that extra protection and will be out of reach, right?
Okay, great, thank you.
I hope we're answering the question. So, all right, I guess we move on to an actual case study. Drum roll, maybe, Chloe. So, very excited about this.
This is it, IRL, in real life, as they say. Tell us the stories.
So, we recently had an installation at the J.E. Dunn headquarters. J.E. Dunn is one of the largest general contractors in the U.S., based out of Kansas City. So J.E. Dunn actually attended one of our roadshows where we presented the solutions, and he loved it because, ironically, he had the need at that point in time last year to have an installation for his commercial fleet vehicles, in this case, Ford Lightning trucks. But the building, it's next door to a public garage. So now we're talking about certain limitations. This is an existing parking garage built 20 plus years ago. There were some constrictions, constraints about the space. They could not do trenching. They could not do ground up pedestals. And they had, just like Doug said early in the call, they had issues because they're going to have to shut down the power in the entire public garage to do the electrical installation, which was going to affect the other tenant, right? So a lot of moving parts in this situation, right? So we were able to provide a solution, our Series S 250 amp, and you can see it here in the image. It actually only has 2 plugs feeding 2 wall mount level 2 chargers, right? So let's talk about some of the constraints that they have electrically in the same site. So this building already had 3 wall mount pedestal. You can see one of them right here, right? But this is the issue. If they would have utilized a typical EV pedestal, they would have to have the pedestals, which was going to require more shutdown of the area. And by the way, the first 2 chargers that I show in the previous pictures are located right at one of the main entrances to the parking garage. So traffic was also another issue, right? And of course, by every time that you trench, you have to put concrete, you have to wait for dry, so it adds time and money, right? Also, if you're going to feed a EV charger that is located far away from this point of entrance, you have to have enough room inside the panel board. Chloe, do you know what a panel board is, right? A load center in your house? The infamous fuse box.
Under the old stairs.
This is, there you go, old stairs.
The old stairs. We have a very little old creaky house, so yes, it's probably good. It hasn't been there since 1934, but sometime around. No, it's perfectly functioning. But I do know, even my electrical, minimal electrical engineering knows where the panel is.
So your panel is a load center at a residential level. Here we're talking about a panel board for commercial application. Same thing, just bigger, right? But what happened is that when this system was created, it was not designed to have provisions that large, or those large electrical loads like electric vehicles, in this case, on ramps. So the panel board only has room for a certain number of circuits. And if you don't have enough room to add a breaker, or you don't have the right amperage, you have to add another panel. And in this particular situation, this case study, that was going to occur to add more panels and more of these pollards right here. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. I'm going to try to explain this. The other constraint is that the electric chargers that they're going to add are located 270 feet. That's about 82 meters away from this point. Right. So when you get now into the power distribution basics, right? When you distribute voltage from one place to another one, you're going to have impedance, right? Which is the resistance of the current or the power to travel, right? So if you do that, you have to size your system for that. You have to use bigger cable, which is more costly, et cetera, et cetera. So you start, and if you have a panel board or a breaker inside here, you have to have one pipe and wire to go into each one of the EV chargers that are located 82 meters, 270 feet away. So you start seeing all the different issues that they were having at this particular. And we're not even mentioning the non-electrical challenges, right? Just like Doug said, they had to shut down the elevator and make sure that nobody gets stuck in there.
Yeah.
Right. They have to do it quick. Right. Anyway, and if they're going to trench to concrete, they were going to have to hire a geotechnical engineering firm to do infrared studies to see through the concrete to make sure there's no tension cables that they could damage if they drill through. A lot of moving parts, right? So you want to simplify. With this system, they were able to carry only one feeder all the way to the transformer. That's what DTT means, dry tie transformer. You can see the feeder, this one right here, right? So they were able to have only one feeder, one cable from beginning to end until the point of use, which made it a lot simpler, faster to do. And by the way, the whole installation took him only a day and a half, which is pretty fast considering, right?
Considering the space that you were trying to connect as well.
Exactly.
And that it didn't have any of this, and you know, it had very minimal infrastructure for this to expand when they started.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So here, here's a close up to our IP54 Series S, one of the plugs, and you can see the breaker inside. It has an actuator, so you can pull it from the outside without having to open the lid. So the contractor loves this because they can have the breaker not in the panel board, but at the location, at the exact point of use, and can turn it on and off as needed, right? For safety, to work for it. They don't have to go all the way back 82 meters away to do that kind of stuff, right? The end cap is for safety. Also, it's hard to see in the picture, but you see this is, I believe this is a fire pipe. So the space was constrained. There was not much space, but because of the low profile of the busway, it was able to fit in between this space right here, which made it a lot easier, right? We mentioned the one feeder. And well, I don't know, but I'm guilty as charged when I drive and I pull into parking lot. I always hit the front, right? So with the ballers, right, no distracted drivers, right? They didn't have to add the additional costs, right? And also Unistrut. Unistrut, it's a what would that be, Doug? A device that is commonly used in the industry. That it's basically
mechanical support. Yeah,
mechanical support. It has hundreds of different applications. So they were able to put that provision right beforehand for additional growth, right?
And so what happens in this situation? I know you're going to go through various different aspects still. If, you know, you have a project and then they want to add more charges 6 months down the line or a year down the line, what's the reality of you being able to help with that? Does this compare to hardwired products? There
Absolutely.
You see.
So very interesting. Thank you. So, I mean, this is very, very unique application, retrofit billing, right? Very specific challenges, but when you compare one to the other one, that's exactly the results, which is outstanding. Of course, customer was really happy. And to answer your question, right? If they need to add more breaker,
here's one you made earlier, and here's one you made later. I love it.
We just made the slide in 1 second for you. But Doug, go ahead. You can explain this one better than me, probably.
Yeah, well, the top right-hand corner basically shows you the process of adding, I guess, or extending onto your bus. So this would be taking a new housing, let's say that's on the left, for example, and you just put your seal in place for if it's a Series S. Slide the coupler over, and then there's a couple bolts that come in here into play, and there's a coupler on the top and the bottom. And this is a couple hours worth of work if you have everything on site, if you have the materials on site. And you can see in the left picture, August 2024, can you point to the end cap there? Where Adrian had highlighted where the end cap was earlier. Basically that would be removed prior to adding on the other section. And then on the right-hand side, you can see where that was done. So yeah, they already, they went from, they doing 2 chargers to 4, I think, Adrian, or something like that. Is that why they added that?
Yes. Yes. As soon as they finish, they order another section. And just like Doug mentioned, it's very seamless to add. Also, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, which helps too, because you don't have to buy all this equipment at one time, right? You don't have to buy all the chargers, have all the plug-in units and the material necessarily on hand at the beginning. And today maybe you need 10, or in this case 2, you need 4, maybe next year you need 6, whatever. So you just keep expanding. Now, obviously you're going to be limited by, whatever run you have and the total max, power output, right? But you can run a parallel run. You can add a large. You could build this with this was a 250 amp, I believe. You could have started with an 800 amp system, knowing that you're going to be adding on. So it kind of depends. You do want to do a little bit of planning up front, but either way, you've got some flexibility there.
Excellent. Another thing that I like to point out is that the system is basically virtually maintenance free, Chloe. Once you install it, the joints are very solid. You don't have to go back. Like some traditional systems are similar, called bus ducts, basically. Right. You have to go in and inspect them, make sure you don't have hot zones and infrared scanning. With this system, you don't have to do anything like that, right? So very easy, very seamless, right?
And why is that? How is the product evolved from a traditional one where you would have to go and do infrared scans and sort of it would have
great question.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a slide to better show that, but some of the traditional bus duct systems have what they call a sandwich design. So basically, you can have several layers that join together, and you have a bolt in between that you have to tight a specific torque force.
Okay.
And over time, movement, seismic, whatever, those joints get loose a little bit. Okay. So a big no-no in the electrical distribution is you don't want to have loose contacts, right? Because they can arc, they can cause sparks, and that becomes a safety hazard, right?
Yeah.
So you have to constantly go up there and monitor them. In our case, you don't, right? And this comes back to our very first question, I believe, Chloe, because what you're seeing here on a parking lot is what we have done for years and years.
Right.
Either a manufacturing facility, automotive plants, EV charging assembly plants, battery plants, you name it, as well as data center all over the world, right? But once again, the systems are transferable. The benefits of the system can be utilized in a commercial setting like this, right? And that's what we are presenting. Very excited to show you this solution, right? Did I answer your question?
Did. I was imagining in the I'm going to call them the old-fashioned ones, that there might also be small animals that might get inside any cracks, or in these kind of like a sort of an air conditioning kind of duct as well. But I assume they're always a bit smaller than that.
Like
not for your new ones, but just the old-fashioned ones. You said infrared. I was like, what are they trying to find in there?
Yeah, they find some interesting stuff, right?
I bet.
But you bring up a good point, right? Some of these buildings are so old that they may have an old bus duct system that is obsolete. And as they try to find replacements, they're not available anymore. Right. The companies that build them no longer have them. And our systems definitely are here to stay, right? And it's very light, very easy to install compared to the old, bulky, big steel enclosures, right? So that's another benefit that we bring to the table.
Great.
Once again, no concrete. As we go to these EV shows, Chloe, around the country and the world, and we talk to potential users, and we tell them that they don't have to use no concrete, they don't have to they smile, right? Because that's a big hurdle for electrical contractors, right? They don't want to deal with that, right? But ultimately, a lot of benefits. We talked about some of these, but important to mention that the system is universally compatible with any level 1, 2, or 3. Okay. We have options, whether it's a level 1 residential, not this case maybe, but we have the busway is rated up to 600 volts AC or DC, and there's plan to increase the voltage, right, to provide bigger power as we continue this path. But if the audience has a quick DC charger that runs at 40 volts, the system will be able to provide the power for that as well. And ultimately, the applications are endless, right?
Yeah. And I was going to say, it goes beyond just passenger cars. What other EV applications are you looking at using your busways for, or are you already using them for?
All right, that's a good segue for our next slide.
So I guess to answer your question, we are already using them in other applications, and that's kind of where we got started, actually. There was use cases here on the bottom left-hand corner is one that was actually a golf cart barn in Indiana University. And this was, I guess, was this 3-4 years ago, I think, Adrian, I believe.
Something like that, yes.
So yeah, they saw the perfect use of the product here. On the top right-hand corners is kind of a rendering of another option where you may have covered outdoor parking. And then bottom right, I think bottom right is still the same. Yeah, that's in the end as well. So here we go. Golf cart charging, right? I think we've got some other pictures here we're going to show. Or did you have anything else to add on this one, Adrian?
No, yeah, I'd like to add that a common question, Chloe, that people ask us is how long can you go? And the answer is how long is your building, right? Ultimately, we can add section. We standardize on 3 meters, 10-foot sections, but we can build basically to any length, right?
What's the biggest? What are the biggest projects to hand that you can think of, like in terms of the width, the breadth of scale that you've already
That's a great
deployed
question.
on in the EV space? Let's say
in the EV space,
to cut it down a little bit.
Well, to put things in perspective, a major automotive manufacturer at one point acquired busway for a project, and if you would put one section after the other one, it was 7 miles long.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, there's some electrical concerns about voltage drop, but we have different solutions to address that.
Okay.
But ultimately, this is what we mean by your personalized electrical grid above your shoulders, right? Here's a barn. And then in this case, the best configuration was to have these elbows, and we also can do T shapes, et cetera, right? But ultimately, we saw this benefit. We saw the opportunity, knowing how many electric vehicles potentially we could have, and that's why we're in this business, right? And another way for us, for Starline, for us in electric vehicle, it could be a vehicle with one wheel or more that transports people or goods, right? So for us, electric vehicle could be not just the cars that you and I drive, right? But in this case, another area we have expanded is on distribution centers, right? In the US and of course other parts of the world, buying online has become the norm, and retailers have moved to the tendency of build bigger and bigger distribution centers that are located near where the public is, right? Where the buyers are. And of course, more inventory that needs to be carried. How do you reduce costs? And a big part of it is electric forklifts, right? And we have a better picture next. So here we go again. They have the need to have an area where they can bring the the forklift, and change a battery for a charged one, right? And they call these battery exchanger areas. And we have some examples here. These are companies that can build these custom-made racks where you can have a high density of batteries. You can see right here being charged. You can see the busway right here. You can do the same job with pipe and wire. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with pipe and wire, Adrian, what have we got? 30 or 40 plugins there. So that would, and I think there might be two drops on each one of those. So you're talking what? I don't know, 60 to 80 runs of pipe and wire.
Exactly. And I mean, you're talking about very hard, not very hard, but very big wire. Depending size, 400s, MCM, depend, right? We're not going to get into technicalities of the wire size, but once again, it takes time. In this case, this company, VHS, Battery Handling Systems out of St. Louis, a partner of us, when they do a project with a busway, they don't charge their own customers for the labor to install the busway because it's so fast for them, right? It really speeds up the installation for them. And Publix, it's a very well-known supermarket line in the southeast of the U.S. Florida, some parts of that. If you've been there in vacations in Disney, maybe you probably seen them.
No,
Chloe?
still not been to Disney. My dad failed on this. Yes,
Your dad failed, but you can go.
Well, you know, I've been asking since I was 7, so no. But our charged offices are in Florida, so we will be getting together next year.
Never too late.
It's a Disney gathering.
There you go.
Chris
so in
is
this
in the
case,
background.
The busway,
he's laughing there.
I'm sure he is. Here you can see the busway. Not in this case, it's not installed overhead. It's actually installed off the wall. So the ways to install that are multiple as well, right? We got a lot of options, and this is a great example of that. The job that we did in Canada, Jonka 2. It's basically a retailer for pharmacies and clothing and stuff like that. But they built, here we go, another distribution center. But look at all the different electric forklifts that they have, basically long, big parking lots of these electric vehicles. And to bring, just like Doug was saying 2 slides ago, to bring the pipe and wire to do this job, it was going to take a massive amount of time. Instead, they built this U-shaped rack. I hope the audience can see it. This self-standing U-shaped rack, and then they mounted the busway on top of it. And we have one plug with the fuses with high KIC rating. That's another terminology to feed each one of the chargers that are located right here. So seamless job. And here's a better image of the rack that they built. And the job was so successful that some of their neighbor companies loved it, and they came to us and said, we want the same thing, right? So IKEA was one of them. So different. This has been years ago. So once again, we saw the opportunity, right, to help on the EVSE infrastructure, but we needed to make some changes to our design, and that's what we did with the Series S IP54 rated busway, right? And this is just a little bit of information as well. Legrand is a huge company. We're based out of France, and some of our sister companies, sister brands are also penetrating the market. In this case, our sister brand WireMall, which is a leader on end-to-end cable management solutions. They also offer their own level 2 charger. Now, of course, we got to have pedestals, right? I'm saying pedestals are good, right? But they have some limitations on the level 2, and of course, wall mount as well. They offer 48 amps, and some of the benefits that you can see here on the bullet list. One of them is having the OCC open protocol for the software. In this case, it comes out of the factory with the software amp up, but they're also working on having other softwares depending on the choice of the adopter, right? So that can communicate with their EV chargers, EV vehicles networks, right? So it's important to mention that, right? So we're having some joint efforts, right? As a company, we have a lot of resources to provide even more and more solutions to the EV
fantastic
market, right? All right. I guess last but not least, right? This is where you can reach out. I mean, you can hide nowadays, Chloe, right? I mean, if you try to hide, it's going to be tough, right?
Yeah.
You guys can find us. Believe it or not, we have a Facebook account in case you decide to
you can find them anywhere, or they can just come and find your local office and stalk the local representative, as we're kind of
There's a phone number in the US. Of course, if you just put on your favorite browser Starline Power, you'll have tons of video clips, case studies, what have you. But ultimately, we do business in over 90 countries, and we have local representatives all over the world. And we also, important to highlight, we have our own engineering field services team. A lot of the, I would say, some of the intimidating factor, Chloe, is that electrical contractors have not seen the system before, maybe.
Okay.
But it's really simple to install, right? But if they want to bring to a more comfort level, we have a big network all over the world of engineering services that can help them with startup and commissioning. It is required for the IP54 rated busway, and we can help out, right? But what we have seen, right, Doug, let me know too, once they install it once, they say, oh, this was so easy, right? And unfortunately, they don't call us again sometimes, but ultimately, it's very, very seamless, right?
So before we go to audience questions, because we have a lot coming in, so I'm just warning you, you're going to be working hard now. Very briefly, how does Starline keep up with the accelerated development of EVs and the infrastructure that's required to support them?
Well, that's a great question. Well, to start up, we have a very aggressive growth plan for the next 5 years. I mean, fortunately, our product is in high demand. And just in the last 8 years, we have built 4 new manufacturing facilities all over the world. One is in Reading, the UK, not far from you, actually, Chloe. The other one is in Singapore, in POAS. Another one in China, in EVSE, I think west of Shanghai. And recently, we just expanded our plant in Juarez, Mexico, just south of the border from El Paso, Texas. That, and there's other facilities for warehouse, et cetera. So to keep up, I mean, we have invested a lot on our team, hiring a lot of engineers, expanding our operations, and of course, building more and more type of plug units that will satisfy the specific and new needs for any type of market, not just EV, right, but all the other ones as well. And of course, Doug Moore and his team go ahead, Doug, about the Series S.
Well, yeah, like as Adrian mentioned, the Series S system was designed, specifically with these types of, markets in mind and some of the changes that are coming. But, as you mentioned earlier, we're known to work in the data center market. Well, there's a lot of things that are changing there too. So we've got a really, I guess, a good R&D team that's lean and responsive. I think we're trying to stay ahead. We've always kind of been known to keep up with latest technologies and needs in the market. So we're continuing to invest in that. So we want to continue to do that, and that's part of the plan and part of our strategy long term, just to keep up, like you said, and it's really through investing and commitment. So.
Well, thank you
In
so
fact,
much. I was
if
going
I
to say for
mention
sharing
something
the
very,
plans, but please do. Yeah, because then we'll move on to, we've got now about
no,
30
very
questions
quickly,
coming in.
that's great. And we will
Yeah.
answer all of them, maybe not during the hour, but
Yeah.
ironically, it was in 2017 or 18 when we exhibited our solutions with a concept at the ACT Expo in Long
Which we were
Beach.
talking about before we
We're
started
talking about that,
broadcasting.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we came with the concept and we listened to the public, and we decided to go back to the drawing board, and we spent,
Right.
I mean, basically resources to develop once again the very first IP54 uh, busway, open channel busway in the market, and that's basically the baseline for us to be able to offer these commercial type of solutions that are now exposed to other elements in which we had not been exposed in the past, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
So that we're doing that and a lot more to continue. Go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say, just kind of perusing through these questions. By the way, these are great questions, and I know we're going to get answers to all of you. But some of these, I know we're going to have to go to our technical folks to get some answers,
That is
because these are great questions.
absolutely fine. You can just pick, and everybody in the audience who's sent in questions or comments, that's the thing. If Doug and Adrian don't have time to get through all the questions today, and we are going to start very shortly, or don't get time or can't give you the answers right now, Doug and Adrian and their team are going to get a copy of all the questions. So as long as you've put your name alongside your question, they can get back to you directly and put you in touch with the right people who can help. So let's get started. Doug, Adrian, do you just want to start taking it in turns and start reading out some of the questions that you can and you'd like to answer?
There's some great questions. Where do we start, right? All right, well, go ahead.
I had a question on this question. Garage orphan problem that needs solution everywhere. I'd like to know, I'm very curious of what
Does that mean
means.
A terraced house without a garage, perhaps? A house without a garage? That was like a child without a parent, an orphan. I'm assuming that was I think that was in response to my discussion about why I don't have an electric vehicle outside my house.
So if I understand Riot's question on that, I mean, we have seen a great deal of older buildings that are being repurposed, even cannabis, right? So these are buildings that can have a wall as thick as 18 inches, and it is very difficult to drill holes through it to build the same size. So everything has to be installed surface, right? So the flexibility of the busway can allow you to go into, if I understand the term, orphan garage and retrofit it with the system, right? The other thing too is that you can bring the material with you and reinstall it in a completely new building as well. So also it's also environmentally friendly too, right? I hope that's what he meant. Hope we answer your question, Riot.
You can always write in, Riot, if we haven't. Just have a look through and see what the next one you can do.
Someone asked, is this all aluminum? I'm assuming they're talking about the housing. The housing is aluminum. Obviously the conductors are copper, or as you get into the higher capacities, it's a hybrid actually.
Yes, and the conductors are mostly copper. Starting at 800 amps, right? We can have a combination of copper and aluminum. And the reason we do that, as you know, copper is a better conductor than aluminum. But if you use 200 amp copper only, the cost can be pretty high, right? But we can do both, and without compromising the conductivity. We also have a DC rated busway. I think that's another one of your questions, right? Our systems can be AC or DC, not the same busway, right? But we can build it according to that as well. Great questions. We're definitely making us work here. I love that, Chloe.
How many? Oh, here's one, Adrian. How many chargers? I think, yeah. How many chargers can the power enclosure support? From Neil. It's really based on how many. There is a limit on the size of the plug, so we can get you. We have some diagrams that show you the max number of plugs per section. These straight sections are 10 feet long, and the other thing we can provide to you is the weight. But I think in this case, it's really going to be limit on space.
Correct.
The number of chargers. So these things are, I think, 11 inches wide. We've got 10 feet pluggable space. So I'd have to do the calculations, but we do have a diagram that shows that.
Exactly. I would like to add, when we design a system, we always try to be cost effective. So we have plugs that can have 6 cords coming down from one plug, right? So we try to create these plugs as a little panel board and integrate as many components as it makes sense to minimize the number of plugs that you will need, right? To Doug's point, you're probably not going to be able to have 6 cords coming to a plug because the vehicles occupy a certain space, and then you have a very long cable, right? But ultimately, in theory, we can have back-to-back, and I changed the slide here so you can see one example here where we have a combination of twist locks and a quad receptacle.
Yeah. By the way, Adrian, thanks for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that, but we can do up to 250 amps in one box, and we could have 4 drops, for example. So if you had 460 amp breakers supplying 4 chargers, so you can actually kind of maximize that that space utilization.
Exactly. We have a question here from an anonymous attendee. Is there any infrastructure in case of mitigating harmonics? I mean, for the most part, we're not. I mean, if harmonics is an issue with clean power, I mean, we can have a line reactor or something ahead of it. But for the most part, we can also have a 200% neutral on the side of the. Let me see right here. If you can see it, we can add a neutral. Well, this one right here on this little channel right here, so that you can have a cleaner power coming through it. But for the most part, harmonics has not been an issue for us. As you know, it's very prominent, like in computers and some other equipment. But for the most part, we have clean power coming through it. I see a great suggestion of developing some more plugs, but we're working on it, Ryan. Trust me on that.
We're going to come back. I think we're going to come back at some point, Chloe. Hopefully, if you invite us back, maybe next year sometime. With
I'm giving you only 6 months. I'm sorry. Yeah, yes,
right.
Next year. Yeah. You better get working fast. There's a lot of
Sounds
demands.
good.
This audience
Sounds
are very
good.
demanding. I'm sure there's a few more
love
suggestions.
it. We love it. Well, it's a very vibrant market, right? And we've seen the collaboration between companies. We have agreements with pretty much almost every EV charger manufacturer. But that's the fun part of it, Chloe. You know, we go to these like ACT Expo, and we're going to be in 4 trade shows next year as well. Also the EV Charging Expo, the Battery Show in Detroit.
Yep.
These are shows that we've been going for years, right? But pretty excited. Question from Tad: has Starline looked into the light electric vehicle charging sector? Absolutely. I mean, that's why we presented, and you may remember if you were at time, Tad, one of the first few slides. We've seen a huge increase on adoption for electric commercial fleets. And that's an area where we believe we can bring more and more value, because usually these fleets are located inside into a private garage, or what the term uses as inside the fence, where you don't have public access in there, where you don't have some of the safety concerns that you may have in a public parking space, right? And ultimately, this particular sector of the market, or the segment of the market, the barriers of adoptions are just not there, right? Electric commercial fleets, they're ready to go. 5-6 years ago, they had a plan to convert 25% of their EV fleets, into electric. Now it is 100%, right? Because they've seen the benefits, the cost savings, plus they change the vehicles every 3 years or so, right? As their leases are up, right? So I hope I answered your question on that. I saw a comment here, education of management, anonymous. So, I mean, go ahead.
I'm assuming that was one of the challenges that came in first. So I think when we were talking about the challenges.
Probably, yes. Good point.
But that's good. That's great feedback there.
How long can you use the rails? That's a question from Tal. If I answer your question correctly, Tal, basically, I mean, think of this as a switching duty breaker, right? The fact that you can plug in your plug-in unit on the open channel at any point at the length of the busway, in theory, gives you almost an infinite number of positions in which you can insert the blade without causing any issues, even if you just move it by a centimeter or less, right? So, I mean, you can really move in as many times as you want in the lifeline of it. But the life expectancy is what, 25 years or so, Doug? We've seen some of the systems.
Oh yeah, I think we've had some out there longer than that, but yeah, we say 20 years is it estimated. So
great Great questions.
I think we've got time for a couple more questions. I don't know if you guys have seen this one. It's again from anonymous attendee, but how do you address situations where there just isn't enough power to feed the desired number of chargers and infrastructure upgrades, i.e. 2+ years away due to utility constraints or battery storage, which could store off-peak power inside an enclosed parking garage is not allowed due to safety constraints? Any sort of projects you've worked on where that you've kind of seen these kinds of constraints? I'll just bring that up.
I was reading a question. Go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't think we've run into that yet, but I think we're typically, we're bringing the power that they have capacity for, right? And
Yeah.
we can go up to, well, we can do as many runs as as we need to support the power needs that they need. But again, ultimately, how the power gets there and how much their overall capacity is, I don't think we've run into that situation yet, Adrian.
Maybe something they do before they approach, that's something they'd have to sort before they would approach you, because it's a different part of the journey, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you want to choose another couple of questions.
Yeah, I saw a question from Pablo Ruiz. Pablo, I think you're asking about the, I'm trying to find your question again, but you're asking about how it can be less expensive. But ultimately, the installation of the busway compared to pipe and wire can be done as fast as 90% faster, right? And if there's flexibility needed in the loads, that's when the end user gets the most benefit out of the busway, because if you need to add circuits in the future, then they don't really require electrical contractors to go in and make the changes in a safe way, right? They will need it to make electrical final connections, but every case is different. But for the most part, that's one of the reasons why we have fortunately expanded so much, because the benefits are there. This is an innovative way to distribute power, and a lot of benefits: scalability, customization, power at the point of use, and so on and so forth, right? That's some great questions. I wish we had more hours to answer. We're going to have to answer some of these questions in writing, right? As we'll answer every single one of them.
We can go a couple more minutes, so just
Okay,
see if there's anything, and then we'll kind of do a little wrap up.
Yes. Here's one from James: outdoor ratings for parking lot carports. So we've had this one a lot, actually. Obviously, there's a lot of outdoor parking or open surface parking lots. Clearly, you need to be, a higher IP rating or protection rating than we offer. But there's also a lot of covered outdoor or parking garages that are maybe open to the sides, and that's kind of what this was designed for. So for an IP54 product, if it's covered outdoor, that's okay, but we don't recommend, and it's really not rated to be outdoor 24/7, in the elements, wind, rain, snow, everything. So yeah, covered outdoor applications or covered garages are fine, but we would not recommend it for pure outdoor, uncovered, unprotected use.
Got it. Also, a question from David: if our system is rated for seismic event? It is, David. We actually have the Hoshposh rating in California for seismic movement. We can provide specific hangars that can be utilized here on the top of the busway. So yes, we can do that as well. There's a good question here, Doug, maybe for you from Sunny. Is there any coating on aluminum housing, such as epoxy or something? So I know you can mention that one pretty easily.
Yeah, really good question. That was one of the things we realized pretty quickly as we start thinking about, okay, we're going to install this busway in areas where there may be moisture, right, or dust or other kind of debris. So we want to make sure it was going to be safe. Now, in addition to that, again, picture an outdoor or open garage that's covered. Maybe it's near the coast. So what we did was we actually coated. So every one of our Series S busway components is going to be either painted or coated or both. And it's a conversion coat that's we've gone through. I think we simulated 20 years of salt spray testing. So we went through numerous tests to ensure that it would hold up to corrosion. So yeah, it is coated, at least for the Series S product, and yeah, we've got all the test data, to show the level of protection available.
I've just got one question that's come in here to me, and let me just get that up. And it said, I saw you have power monitoring solutions. What role does your company play in EV related applications that require real-time power management and responsiveness? Any final input on that area?
Great question. And who asked that question, Chloe?
It's anonymous.
Okay. Well, Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous.
Anonymous, yes.
We have the ability to integrate basically any meter into plugs, right? A few years ago, our organization decided to make investments on an engineering group to create our own generation of meters. And we are into the third generation. And that's what this slide right here shows, the M70. For the most part, it's for power monitoring. I think there's about, what, Doug, 45 different monitoring points like power factor, voltage, etc. So you can integrate the monitor into your plug, or you can have it at the end-feed level to monitor the power through the entire system, right? At this point, these are not designed to do like load management or something like that, which is one of the questions that I saw too from one of our audience members. But ultimately, the role that we play is, I think recently, actually, I know we surpassed the 1 million meters installed around the world. So we continue to make strides in that. But if another question that came up, and I'd like to mention that, is that we were asked if we can do load management. In this case, the system, the first milestone for us was to provide the protection against dust and liquid, right? That was the framework that we learned at the ACT Expo in Long Beach years ago. We have accomplished what fortunately nobody else has done in our case, but we're not stopping there, right? We continue to provide more and more solutions for the EV market. For now, it's basically what we do best, right? Power distribution. We can customize it, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some additional benefits in the near future.
And
hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you did. You and the guys have done so well in trying to get through your questions. And we're gonna wrap it up now. But I'm going to give you the final question. So we're looking to the future, as we always like to do. What do you see as the next major frontier for electrification? And of course, importantly, how is Starline positioning itself to be at the forefront of this development or developments?
Well, that's a great question. How much time do we get? Well,
about 30 seconds.
Well, from my perspective, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different solutions, right? We have been through the entire history, how we see a trend. I mean, I can go as old as beta VHS, right? That we're going to substitute cinema theaters, you know, the video cassettes, right? And it didn't, right? So I think because of the multiple stages of adoption in the countries, different technologies on wireless, I think in the next few years, there's going to be a lot of different combinations, right? This one will address the immediate ones, right? But ultimately, Legrand it's a big company. We are leaders in many of the markets, and we, as I mentioned earlier today, we're making huge investments to grow, right? And that includes newer technologies that we develop in collaboration as well between our own divisions, right? So, but if you guys want to see what's next, you're going to have us in your next show, then, Chloe. And we'll be able to hopefully show some of that stuff. So we're gonna have to leave it like that.
That would be our pleasure. And Doug, any thoughts from you in terms of the developments, you know, the fast-paced developments in the EV world, and how you see kind of Starline positioning themselves?
No, like I said, I think Adrian hinted earlier. We've got things in the works that we definitely aren't ready to quite reveal yet. But in the next year, we'll have some new things. But I guess I would just go back to one other point we didn't really stress too much, but another advantage here is, as at least in the EV sectors, as the technology changes, the charging technology changes, people might need to replace these chargers, and they might need to go back and dig these up, or pull out all that pipe and wire. Where in this case we can provide just the plug. You've already got the infrastructure there with the busway, right? We can give you a new plug. To meet those needs, because of the level of customization and configuration that we can do with those. So I think that helps us a little bit, prepare for some of the technology changes that are coming that we don't know yet. But and back to what Adrian said earlier too, the company is more than willing to invest and continue to grow. So we got the support for sure.
That's excellent. And it sounds like adaptability is basically what you're always able to offer as well, no matter what changes in this
Sure.
in the EV infrastructure space and sort of beyond. Well, anyway, we have come to the end of our session today. I'm so sorry to say goodbye to Adrian Sanchez, to Doug Moore and the team at Starline for helping us put the session together today, and of course to you, the audience. As I mentioned before, this whole recording is going to be available once the session ends. So it'll be available in a few minutes' time. You just go to the sessions registration page, and if you've got colleagues or friends who haven't registered yet, they can register and they can watch it on demand. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with some links and details to the video for this session, but also the contacts to Adrian, Doug, and the team at Starline as well. So you should get that with you by, well, the end of the next 24 hours in your inbox. But otherwise, it's a big thank you to Doug and Adrian for all the work they've put in today and letting us here at Charged host you. So yeah, thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chloe.
See you
We'll see you at ACT Expo next year.
We will, if not before. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you for our
Take
audience
care.
as well.
Bye.